Hello, friends, and welcome to episode, I think we're at 46. This is actually an extra episode that we're squeezing in here and adding to our current pattern. Today, I have a conversation with Chick Lane, also known as Charles Lane. And Chick is the author of the book Ask, Thank, Tell, which is a wonderful resource for those of you who are in congregations or ministry settings. It really is the go-to book in terms of generosity and stewardship. I was in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago, sat down and talked with Chick in his home. He has a new book out called Reflections on Faith and Finances. So this is a short podcast interview. It's an interruption from our pattern of reading through my new book, Everyday Spirituality. We'll continue that in the next episode. And what's really wonderful is the next episode, that will be episode 47, we'll be covering chapter 7 of the book, which happens to be the chapter on money. It's called Spend. So this is coming at the right time. So let's enjoy this conversation with Chick Lane. Once again, thank you to the Mission Investment Fund for your support of this podcast. Very much appreciate it. Let's get on with that conversation with Chick Lane.
I come at stewardship as a parish pastor. I've got no advanced degrees. I have always been interested in things financial. My daughter's a CPA and probably didn't fall too far from the tree with that interest. And I think that led me then to be interested in something that really isn't, in my mind, all that related to finance. And that is how it is that people grow in their giving. And as a parish pastor, what initially intrigued me was I saw a connection between growth in giving and growth in faith. And I didn't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but I knew that there was some kind of connection there. And I would see it over and over again in people's lives. As I would see their annual pledges go up, I would see their involvement in the life of the congregation go up. And I would see their comfort in talking about their faith go up. And so it was sort of me saying, wonder what that's all about. And as I dug into that, it really led me to understand what I now absolutely believe to be true and what I believe the Bible says. And that is that what we do with our money leads our heart. And that when we invest more of our money through offerings to the church or through gifts to charitable organizations, our heart goes there as well.
Why is that? What do you think is behind that in terms of human spirituality and psychology?
Yeah. Again, I'm still not positive that which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Right, I agree. Yeah.
I'm not sure if people, if part of what happens with people is that they for one reason or another, they start to grow more in their involvement in the life of the church, and then they realize, hey, I need to do more financially to support this congregation, and I want to do that because I'm putting my time there, I'm investing my talents in this congregation, I want to support it financially. I think there's always some of that. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, what Jesus says is not that. He doesn't say where your heart is, there your treasure will be. He says where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So I think there's also the piece that somehow when we invest more money in something, money being dear to us as it is, then that has the ability to kind of drag our heart along and make us want to be more a part of whatever it is that we're investing our finances in. So I think it's a both and. Mm-hmm. But the really unique claim of the Bible is that your money can lead your heart. I think it's pretty obvious that your heart can lead your money. But Jesus sort of tips that on its head. And so what I often will tell stewardship committees when I'm working with them is, you're one of the few committees in the church that has this promise from Jesus that the work that you're doing can help people grow in their relationship with their Lord.
Yeah. And it seems to me one of the things that you do and did really well in Ask, Thank, Tell, and then in this book that you have that we'll talk about in a second, is you help people see that as something that's, how do I put it? It's good for them. I mean, it's an ironic, the more you extend yourself, the better it is for you as a person, as a follower of Christ.
Yeah. Really interesting book, Christian Smith and somebody whose name I forget at the moment, The Paradox of Generosity, published probably 3 or 4 years ago. He's a sociologist at Notre Dame, and what he claims based on his sociological research is that living generous lives leads to the kind of happiness in life that some people in our society try to buy, and they can't. And it's only in giving money away, in giving time away, volunteering, living generously, that we can get to that kind of happiness that we all long for.
Yep. And this does seem to be a uniquely middle class or upper middle class situation.
It is.
I think it's a different dynamic for people for lower classes or economically deprived folks. They're just trying to get enough to scrape by.
Right. And often are more generous, not larger dollar amounts, but percentage-wise, which is all the Bible cares about. Percentage-wise, they're more generous than most middle-class and upper-class folks.
Yep.
So
and not only in terms of dollars, but time and energy. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And for those of us who have been fortunate enough to travel globally to developing countries, you see that lesson in spades there. It's just amazing.
So you've written about this in the book Ask, Thank, Tell, which I just think it is the Bible of congregational stewardship. I tell everybody about it. How did that book come about? And tell us the story behind that.
Sure. I actually started writing the book on a sabbatical in 2003. I had been doing stewardship work in the Northwestern Minnesota Synod for 7 years at that time, and took a sabbatical and decided that what I wanted to do for my sabbatical project was write down what I believed about stewardship. I had been doing it, but I'd never really sat down and tried to systematically say, what do I believe? Never intended it to be published. It was just an exercise for myself to bring greater clarity to my own thinking and my own work. Finished it, showed it to a few friends who were pastors for the most part, and they all said, this isn't bad. I think that was the quote from one of them. This isn't bad. You ought to show this to somebody and see if... So I did. I showed it to, at that point, Augsburg Fortress, and they were interested in it. Took a couple of years to work its way through, and then was published in 2006. And
what's the premise? What's the premise? Like, if somebody has not read the book and they're listening to this tell us to ask, thank, tell. Those simple, small words are just really helpful.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second, but let me back up first, because the first premise of the book is that for way too long, when churches have talked about money, they've focused on the bills, not on the Bible. And who among us likes to pay bills? We do it because we have to, but it sure doesn't bring us joy. And so the first half of the book really is built around the premise that, to the extent that we in Congregational Stewardship Ministry can forget the bills and start talking about the Bible and the message of the Bible, talk about discipleship, talk about giving as it flows from discipleship, not giving so that we can get the bills paid. So that's the first half of the book is developing that. And then the second half of the book is a suggestion that if we simply focus our stewardship ministry on those three verbs, ask, thank, tell, we are going to be led in a pretty positive way. And that I suggest that we not have a stewardship committee that meets each month and tries to decide what to do, but rather have task forces that work on, have an ask task force and a thank task force and a tell task force. Probably not in that order. I get some people that'll either critique me or tease me that I've got the title wrong, that it probably should be Thank, Tell, Ask, or something like, the order. And they're right. It just sounded better. So it's Ask, Thank, Tell. But each of those activities are very important.
Yep.
And that's what I try to do with the second half of the book, is just say, let's make sure we're doing a good job on these three basic areas of stewardship. Let's make sure people know what the congregation is doing in Jesus' name, how their money is being invested in ministry.
That's
the tell.
Yeah.
The thank is, I talk a little bit in there, and if I was writing the book now, I'd probably have a lot more examples of the importance of thanking people. We sometimes just take it for granted, if giving to the congregation is what I should do. Well, maybe it is, but thank me too. We can learn a lot from nonprofits, other church organizations that do a lot better job of thanking than most congregations do. So that's the thank. And then the ask is to boldly say, if the ministry of this congregation is worth supporting, then let's not apologize for asking people to support it. We're doing God's work. What's more exciting than that?
And that we need all three of those to have a balanced approach.
Yeah. If all you do is get to, we're sitting here on October 21st. If all you do is get to October 21st and ask people to support the ministry of the congregation next year, however you do that in your congregation, you're probably not going to be very successful.
Yeah.
But if you've spent the year telling them what the congregation is doing in Jesus' name, and thanking them for their support of the congregation over and over and over, then when it comes time to ask them for their support for the coming year, or however congregations do that in very many different ways. But when you're ready to ask, do it boldly, and people already know that this congregation is making a difference.
Yeah. And there are so many examples and ideas in that second half of the book that you could go for 15 years and probably not exhaust them. I mean, that's
well,
really...
You're very kind.
Well, I mean, because knowing congregations and how difficult it is to get them to do and embrace a new project. So just thank, as an example, excuse me, writing thank you notes from the church council to people in the congregation that are singing in the choir, teaching Sunday school, whatever it may be. Those are very powerful, and you can run with that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my friends who's retired pastor now, but he claims that the most important thing he did in his ministry was every Monday morning he wrote 5 thank you notes. He was a very good pastor. I don't think that's the most important thing he did. But he got a lot of, it meant a lot to people to get those. And he got a lot of yeses when he asked people to do other things because he'd thanked them for the last thing they did.
In this day and age of digital communication, a handwritten note just leaps out of the mailbox for people.
Yeah, when I wrote the book, I'm trying to remember, we weren't doing much emailing. And we certainly weren't doing a lot of other social media things that we're doing now. So I agree with you. I think a handwritten note is probably even more effective in 2019 than it was in 2003. Yeah. Another thing that we're doing in the congregation where I'm currently serving is a Thanksgiving moment. Not anything that's in Ask, Thank, Tell, but it is, we take about 45 seconds every week in worship right before the offering to tell people of something that we're doing in the congregation or in the community or around the world, and then to say thank you. That their giving makes it possible for us to do that. So it's a great way of combining tell and thank, and it's really changed us. People have a much better sense of what it is that our congregation is doing than they would have otherwise. Because why would they know if we don't tell them?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And we do it, the pastors do it because we have services back to back to back, and we're very time conscious. In a different setting, perhaps people who are involved in those ministries could do the Thanksgiving moments, might even be more effective.
And brief. I heard
brief,
45
seconds. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I love it. So now Ask, Thank, Tell is coming out. It's still out, available through Augsburg Fortress, but not a new version, but just a new cover.
Just a new cover. They're it's been 13 years, and they're going to just kind of change the look, but the book will be the same.
Okay. But now you have this book, which is new. So tell me about what this is. It's called Reflections on Faith and Finances, and a little tiny, 50 pages,
48 pages, or whatever works well in publishing a small book. Yeah, what it is it's driven out of a conviction that whole biblical conversation in congregations around stewardship is still a conversation that we need to be having. And a friend of mine who's a pastor asked for recommendations of resources to do that discussion in his congregation. I had recommended Adam Hamilton's Enough to him last year, which they did.
Good book.
So he called me up and he said, okay, so what's next? And I struggled to come up with an idea. And so I thought, you know what? Those 3 chapters, chapter 2, 3, and 4 in Ask, Thank, Tell, would really lend themselves well to this. So I repurposed those 3 chapters with an audience of congregation members rather than the congregational leaders in mind, added discussion questions. So what the book is designed to do is be used by a group of people in a congregation who will sit down, read a chapter, come together, discuss it. So the first chapter is Old Testament, second chapter is New Testament, third chapter is characteristics of biblical giving. That's what I was trying to do. I'm optimistic.
Well, and a couple of pastors that I know have used Ask, Thank, Tell's first, the 3 chapters that are this book, and you told me before we started, you kind of changed the voice of it, so it's much more, accessible for your average person that's going to be a part of a Bible study. But I could also see this as the basis of a 3-week series. If you wanted to center your worship service on 3 consecutive Sundays, and these are really, small, inexpensive, you could make them available to the congregation and work through it.
Yeah, I priced it at $5 because I wanted it to be used by groups.
Right.
So I'm more interested in having it used by groups of people, hence $5 a copy. If I might get an unabashed plug in.
I was going to ask that, Where can they find these and learn more about you?
The website is embracingstewardship.com. That's where you can order it. Mm-hmm. It's $5 a copy. There's some shipping up to 10 copies. But if you order 10 or more copies, shipping is free. It's hopefully very accessible for people. And my hope is that it can be used, that people will find it more accessible than buying a $15 book and really only be interested in the first 3 chapters.
Right. Well, I would encourage people to buy the $15 book because Ask, Thank, Tell that's your pragmatic aspect of it. But this Reflections on Faith and Finances is a great way for everybody just to dive into it, and also moves us. We're never going to get away from the supporting the church, because that's clearly a need and it's part of the function of being an organization. But what I really like about what you've laid out here is, what's the initial impetus and energy behind understanding what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and how that connects to how we spend our money, which is a big part of North American culture.
Absolutely. And I touch on that some. This isn't just a book about what you give to the church, because obviously it all belongs to God, and God has entrusted all of it to us, all that we have. And so how we share money, how we save money, how we spend money, all those things are vital components of what it means to live faithfully with money. So some of that comes through loud and clear, and hopefully the discussion questions will guide groups of people into conversations about not just how much I give away, but also how do I live with money? How do I connect my spending with my faith?
Well, good. I think we've touched on everything. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to highlight?
Having said that, just embracingstewardship.com. I feel like I'm a politician saying, go to my website and make a gift. Not that, but that's where you get it.
Yep. Thanks for doing this.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.